Welcome to Troubleshooting Upgrades and Migration. My name is Harlan Brum. I'm the Global Technical Lead for Revit Architecture with Autodesk Product Support. In this class, we'll talk about the things you should consider when moving to a new version of Revit. We'll cover the tips, tricks, and best practices of upgrading and migrating files and settings. In the first section, we'll talk about things you should know before getting started in Revit 2011. We'll talk about things you should consider before starting in the new release, file locations, and building your template. Prior to upgrade, there are some important things you should consider. First, how far along are you in any of the projects you're currently undertaking? If you updated today, are your projects at a critical stage in the process where lost work would be detrimental to the project? Also, how important are the projects you're working on? Do you have a key project where you can't lose any time or effort upgrading to the next release? It's very important to remember that there is no going back once you've upgraded a project. Projects in Revit architecture, along with families, are not backwards compatible with previous versions. Once a project is upgraded, it cannot be opened in a previous version. Unlike AutoCAD, there is no Save As functionality in the Revit products to save a file in a previous version. Finally, do you meet the minimum system requirements on your machine in order to run the product? Besides just taking a look at the technology needed to run the product, are you up to speed on your Revit training? Getting ready for a new release involves rolling out new features, but also making sure your staff is properly trained on the new technology. Considering your training technology requirements are an important part of preparing for a new release. A key step in upgrading to a new version of Revit is understanding the location of important file locations. It's important to understand that in 2011 products, the program directory has changed slightly, where in previous versions, Revit products were located in the C program files Autodesk Revit Architecture or Revit Structure or MEP 2010 specifying the version year. In 2011, Revit has now standardized on typical Autodesk locations. The location for Revit will now be Program Files, Autodesk, and then the Revit product name. It's also important to know where your local user settings are stored. The following two paths for user profile and local app data are for XP and Vista respectively. It's important to understand whether or not you can migrate existing settings. Make sure to create backup copies of any items you want to make sure to save. Be aware of these new locations. Also, understand whether or not the old information can still be used. For example, in Revit 2011, the keyboard shortcuts.txt file that used to exist in the Revit program directory no longer applies. With the new keyboard shortcuts dialog, Revit now uses a keyboard shortcuts.xml file for this information. It is possible to migrate your old keyboard shortcuts.txt file using the new dialog. So it is important to save this old file before migrating. It's important to understand these file locations prior to upgrade so that you don't lose any time or data during the process. Next, let's talk a little bit about your templates. A question that often gets asked is whether or not you should build a new template with each version of Revit or simply upgrade your existing template. There are a number of reasons for both. First, why should you build a new template? One main reason is that you'll be using a fresh, clean template to start with. This actually has a lot of benefits. One is you'll be sure that all the new features in the new version will be included in the template. Some previous version templates may not upgrade all the way and include all the features with the 2011 version of the product. Starting with a default template and then building your custom template ensures you'll get all the functionality out of the new release. Starting with a fresh, new template also allows you to clean up your existing template and optimize it for use in projects. Think of it as spring cleaning. Also, it's important to note that starting with a new template can prevent errors if template corruption could have occurred. Building a new template definitely has its benefits. However, upgrading an existing template allows you to get started much faster. It's important to consider whether or not you want to upgrade your existing template file or start with a fresh new template. Product support recommends starting with a new fresh template with each version of the product. In this section, we'll talk about the best practices and processes for how to upgrade files, families, and templates from an earlier version of Revit to a Revit 2011 product. I'm going to demo the use of the Content Batch Upgrade utility tool in order to upgrade content from one release to another. This tool is available on the DVD media or after you've downloaded and extracted the installer for Revit 2011. I extracted the installer, so I'll navigate to the Autodesk directory. A Revit 2011 folder is created during the installation process. Inside of this folder, there is a Utilities folder. The Utilities folder contains the Content Batch Upgrade utility in a folder called Common. Inside the Content Batch Upgrade utility folder, the Content Batch utility includes a readme.txt file that explains the instructions on how to run the tool. In order to run the tool, select the upgrade.rfa text file and the upgrade_rfa ms-dos batch file. Select these, right-click, and choose Copy. Go to the directory where you wish to add or upgrade these files. Right-click and paste to paste those two files into this directory. Then double-click on the upgrade_rfa batch file. This creates a famlist_rfa file, which contains a list of families to upgrade. This list can easily be edited to add other directories if you like. Simply copy the ms-dos batch file to the other directories you wish to upload and then combine those famlist.rfa files into one text document. When you're completed doing this, select the upgrade_rfa text document, drag and drop that file on the Revit 2011 icon. This will launch Revit 2011 and open each family, upgrading each family as it goes. It will save a new version of the family within the same folder. each file is upgraded and saved. When the files have been upgraded, Revit will close. Backup files are automatically created for the original files. These files can safely be deleted. It's a great idea to upgrade all your content when you're upgrading to a new release of Revit. Next, let's talk about how to upgrade a project or a template. Upgrading a project or template in Autodesk Revit Architecture 2011 is relatively simple. However, first, there are a few things you should do within Revit Architecture 2010 prior to opening the file in 2011. It's important to open your project file in Revit 2010 prior to upgrade. I have a sample file I wish to upgrade to 2011. I'm going to make sure during the open process I choose the audit option. This is recommended for large files and when preparing to upgrade to a new release. I'll choose yes to continue. Then open the file. For work shared projects, you can also select Detach from Central in order to create a new central file and make sure the old is not affected. Once the project file is opened with the Audit checkbox enabled, go to the Manage tab and choose Purge Unused. This deletes unused elements, families, from the file and will lighten the load during the upgrade process. Make sure to select Check All and OK. Once the file has been purged, you're ready to save the file with a new name so that you have a backup copy of the original file. Now we're ready to open our project and upgrade it to Revit 2011. I've placed the file that's ready for upgrade on my desktop. Instead of double-clicking on Revit 2011 to open it and going to File Open, I'm simply going to drag and drop my Revit file on the icon. This will open the project directly instead of the Recent Files page. Since I've audited and purged my file in the previous release, the file should upgrade and open smoothly. It's important to know that some files may be too large to upgrade on certain machines and may require additional hardware resources. Once the project is open in Revit 2011, it's been upgraded. All you need to do now is save the file in this version so that you will no longer see the upgrade notice. This method of upgrade was for upgrading a single project file. It's important to attempt to upgrade one file at a time. Make sure if you have linked files loaded into your project that you upgrade the linked files separately. Revit will temporarily upgrade any links you have loaded into the project during the upgrade process. However, it's important to make sure you've upgraded those links as well so that Revit doesn't need to spend time upgrading them each time it opens the file. It's a good best practice to upgrade only one file at a time with no linked files attached. In this class, you've learned the things you should consider when moving to a new version of Revit, the process for upgrading projects and families, and the tips, tricks, and best practices of the upgrade process. I hope you learned a lot today. Thanks for attending.